The doctors believed millionaire Vanessa Whitmore would never wake up, but while everyone thought she was unconscious, she heard her husband whisper the terrifying truth behind the accident that nearly took her life. Before we continue, here's a small request. If you're enjoying this story, please like, follow, and subscribe to stay connected and never miss a new story. The millionaire who stayed silent until her enemies destroyed themselves. Vanessa Whitmore had spent nearly 15 years transforming a small family-owned medical supply company into one of the largest healthcare corporations in the United States. Her intelligence, determination, and generosity had earned her respect throughout the business world, but those closest to her saw only the fortune she had built. Her husband, Adrian Whitmore, appeared to be the perfect partner. He smiled during interviews, attended charity galas by her side, and constantly praised her accomplishments in public. Vanessa's closest friend, Cassandra Hayes, had been part of her life since college. Together, they celebrated birthdays, vacations, business milestones, and family holidays. Vanessa trusted them without question because she believed loyalty was something money could never buy. She had no idea that the two people she loved most had secretly fallen in love with each other nearly 2 years earlier. What had started as hidden meetings soon became a carefully planned conspiracy. They wanted complete control of Vanessa's empire, including her luxury properties, investment portfolios, company shares, and charitable foundation. They knew they could never take everything while she remained alive, so they patiently waited for the perfect opportunity to make her death appear like nothing more than a tragic accident. That opportunity arrived on a rainy Thursday evening after Vanessa finished speaking at a children's hospital fundraiser outside Chicago. She declined her driver's offer to take her home, deciding she wanted a quiet drive alone after an exhausting week. Rain covered the highways while city lights reflected across the wet pavement. Soft music played through the speakers as she thought about an upcoming expansion that would create hundreds of new jobs. As she approached a steep intersection, she gently pressed the brake pedal. It dropped straight to the floor without resistance. Her eyes widened. She pumped the brakes again and again, but the sedan continued racing downhill. Every warning light flashed across the dashboard, while the engine roared louder with each passing second. Vanessa gripped the steering wheel with trembling hands, desperately searching for a way to avoid the growing line of traffic ahead. She pulled the emergency brake, causing the rear tires to lock and the vehicle to spin sideways. Cars swerved around her, while terrified pedestrians jumped onto sidewalks. Rather than crashing into the crowded intersection, Vanessa turned sharply toward a concrete divider, sacrificing herself to protect everyone else. The impact sounded like an explosion. Steel twisted, windows shattered, and the front of the luxury sedan crumpled beneath the force of the collision. Airbags deployed instantly as smoke drifted from beneath the hood. Vanessa felt a sharp pain spread across her chest before everything around her became strangely quiet. Her vision blurred, yet she remained awake. Through the shattered driver's window, she saw strangers rushing toward the wreckage. One man broke through the gathering crowd before anyone else. Wearing a faded brown work jacket soaked by rain, he ignored the danger of leaking fuel and carefully reached through the broken glass. "Stay with me," he said calmly. "Help is coming. Just keep breathing." His steady voice cut through the panic surrounding her. He supported her head, checked her pulse, and refused to leave until paramedics gently pulled him away so they could begin treatment. As the ambulance doors closed, Vanessa caught one last glimpse of the stranger standing in the rain, silently hoping she would survive. Hours later, bright operating room lights disappeared behind heavy eyelids. Surgeons worked tirelessly to stabilize internal injuries, while specialists monitored swelling around her brain. When the surgery finally ended, doctors informed her family that the next 72 hours would determine whether she survived. Vanessa wanted to tell them she could hear every word, but her body refused to respond. She was transferred into the intensive care unit, surrounded by humming machines and softly glowing monitors. Every breath was assisted by medical equipment, while nurses carefully recorded every change in her condition. Although completely unable to move, Vanessa remained painfully aware of everything happening around her. She heard doctors discussing brain trauma, nurses adjusting medication, and relatives crying outside her room. She fought with every ounce of strength to open her eyes or lift a finger, but nothing happened. It felt as though her mind had become trapped inside a body that no longer belonged to her. Late that night, the room felt unusually quiet. Footsteps entered slowly before the door closed. Vanessa immediately recognized Adrian's expensive cologne drifting through the air. She expected comforting words from the man she loved. Instead, she heard a long, irritated sigh. "This is taking longer than it should have," Adrian whispered. Another familiar voice answered almost immediately. It was Cassandra. The mechanic promised the brake line would fail the first time she needed it. She replied nervously. How is she still alive? Vanessa felt her heartbeat racing inside her motionless body. Adrian lowered his voice even further. The rescue happened too fast. That construction worker reached her before the fire spread. If he hadn't stopped. His sentence faded into silence before Cassandra spoke again. Do you realize everything is frozen until she's declared dead? The company board won't approve anything. The trust can't be touched. The lawyers keep saying we have to wait. Adrian muttered angrily. We've spent nearly 2 years planning this. We created shell companies, moved money through fake consulting contracts, and even arranged our wedding license under different names. We were supposed to be celebrating by now. Every word struck Vanessa harder than the accident itself. The husband she adored had spent years planning her murder alongside the woman she called her sister. The room suddenly felt colder than any winter night she had ever known. Adrian stepped closer to her bed. If she wakes up, he whispered. Cassandra interrupted quickly. She won't. The doctors said the brain damage is severe. Adrian hesitated. I just don't like uncertainty. A nurse walked into the room moments later, and their voices transformed instantly. Adrian held Vanessa's hand while pretending to fight back tears. Cassandra spoke with heartbreaking concern, thanking the medical staff for doing everything possible. Their performance was flawless. The moment the nurse left, they quietly walked away together, believing their secret remained perfectly safe. Vanessa wanted to scream, but silence was the only weapon she had left. The following morning, hospital routines continued exactly as before. Specialists checked neurological responses while therapists gently moved her arms and legs to prevent stiffness. Every doctor repeated the same conclusion: unconscious but stable. Vanessa slowly realized her inability to respond had become her greatest advantage. As long as Adrian and Cassandra believed she remained trapped inside a coma, they would continue speaking freely. They would never imagine that every confession was being stored inside the mind of the woman they had tried to kill. That evening, the stranger from the crash quietly entered her hospital room, carrying nothing but a paper cup of coffee and a tired smile. He introduced himself even though he believed she could not hear him. My name is Ethan Brooks, he said softly. I'm just the guy who happened to be driving behind you that night. The nurses told me you're still fighting, so I figured you shouldn't have to fight alone. He pulled a chair beside her bed and spoke about ordinary things instead of sadness. He told her about his 12-year-old daughter, Lily, who dreamed of becoming a veterinarian, and how he worked long hours as an electrical technician to give her every opportunity he never had. He laughed about burning dinner the night before and joked that Lily had declared cereal to be his only safe recipe. For the first time since the crash, Vanessa felt something stronger than fear. She felt hope. Ethan expected nothing from her. He did not know she owned billions of dollars. He did not recognize the famous businesswoman the news channels discussed every hour. To him, she was simply another human being who deserved compassion. As the days passed, Ethan returned after every shift, speaking to her about life, family, and never giving up even when the future seemed uncertain. Meanwhile, Adrian and Cassandra grew increasingly impatient. Their private conversations became more reckless with every passing day. Never realizing that the woman they believed would never hear another word was silently remembering every confession, every lie, and every detail that would one day bring their entire world crashing down. Vanessa remained perfectly still, even as tiny signs of recovery slowly returned. She discovered she could barely move the tip of one finger, then a single eyelid for the briefest moment. Every improvement tempted her to reveal the truth, but she forced herself to wait. She knew one careless movement could give Adrian and Cassandra enough time to destroy evidence and escape justice forever. Instead, she listened. Every visit brought another piece of the puzzle. Adrian complained about delayed insurance payments, hidden investment accounts, and forged financial documents waiting to be activated after her death. Cassandra constantly worried about the company's board of directors and feared someone might begin asking questions. Their confidence made them careless, and their greed slowly replaced caution. Ethan continued visiting every evening, never expecting anything in return. One night, while reading a novel aloud, he noticed the slightest movement beneath Vanessa's hand. He stopped reading immediately and watched carefully. A few seconds later, her index finger moved again. Instead of shouting for help, Ethan quietly leaned closer. "If you can hear me, move your finger one more time," he whispered. Vanessa gathered every ounce of strength she had left and gently touched his wrist. Ethan's eyes widened, but he remained calm. Pretending to adjust her blanket, he slipped his phone into her hand beneath the covers. Vanessa painfully unlocked the screen and typed only 3 words before her strength faded. "Need private investigator." Ethan immediately understood the seriousness of the situation. He deleted the message, slipped the phone back into his pocket, and quietly nodded before leaving the room as if nothing unusual had happened. The very next day, a respected private investigator named Daniel Mercer arrived at the hospital disguised as an insurance representative. Without attracting attention, he began reviewing Vanessa's business records, financial statements, and security footage. What he uncovered shocked even him. Adrian had secretly opened multiple offshore accounts using fake consulting firms. Cassandra had transferred confidential corporate information to shell companies they controlled together. More disturbing still, Daniel located surveillance footage from a neighbor's security camera overlooking Vanessa's private garage. The recording clearly showed Adrian entering the garage late the night before the accident. He knelt beside Vanessa's car for several minutes before quietly leaving with a toolbox in his hands. The timestamp matched the exact period investigators believed the brake system had been tampered with. Daniel immediately turned every piece of evidence over to detectives, who quietly launched a criminal investigation without informing Adrian or Cassandra. Meanwhile, hospital staff began noticing unusual behavior. Adrian repeatedly demanded updates on Vanessa's condition while pretending to be a grieving husband. Cassandra asked suspicious questions about legal paperwork rather than medical treatment. Both of them seemed far more interested in inheritance documents than recovery reports. Detectives instructed hospital security to install additional surveillance around Vanessa's room. Every hallway conversation, every threatening remark, and every suspicious visit was carefully documented. Days later, Adrian's panic finally overcame his patience. He stormed into Vanessa's room late one evening after learning investigators had questioned a mechanic connected to one of his shell companies. Believing Vanessa remained unconscious, he grabbed the bed rail and whispered angrily, "You were supposed to die that night. Everything was perfect. If you wake up now, everything we've built is finished." Cassandra nervously looked toward the hallway before quietly saying, "We should leave. Something doesn't feel right anymore." Neither of them noticed the tiny recording device hidden beneath the bedside table by detectives earlier that morning. Their confession was captured clearly. The following afternoon, police officers quietly positioned themselves outside the ICU while Daniel reviewed the final evidence with prosecutors. Doctors had also noticed dramatic neurological improvement and reduced confidential until investigators were ready. The medical team agreed after detectives explained the danger she still faced. The next morning, Adrian and Cassandra arrived together, believing they would finally pressure doctors into ending aggressive treatment. As they entered the room, several detectives waited silently outside the door. Adrian leaned over Vanessa's bed with complete confidence. "Everything belongs to us now," he whispered. "You just don't know it yet." At that exact moment, Vanessa slowly opened her eyes. Adrian froze. Cassandra stumbled backward, her face drained of color. For several silent seconds, no one spoke. Then Vanessa looked directly at Adrian and calmly said, "I heard every word you whispered beside this bed. Every confession, every lie, every plan." Before either of them could react, detectives entered the room. Daniel placed photographs, financial records, surveillance footage, bank statements, and recorded audio onto a nearby table. One recording after another filled the room with Adrian and Cassandra's own voices discussing brake sabotage, hidden marriages, fake companies, and stolen money. There was nothing left to deny. Adrian desperately claimed everything had been misunderstood, but the evidence was overwhelming. Officers placed both him and Cassandra in handcuffs while hospital staff watched in stunned silence. As they were escorted away, neither dared look back at the woman they had betrayed. Months passed. Vanessa endured painful rehabilitation, learning to walk confidently again after countless hours of physical therapy. Every difficult step reminded her that survival itself had become her greatest victory. Once she fully recovered, she permanently removed Adrian and Cassandra from every business, trust, and legal document connected to her life. She strengthened her company with honest leadership, expanded her charitable foundation, and created new programs supporting trauma survivors and emergency responders. She never forgot the stranger who had stopped in the rain without expecting recognition or reward. Ethan had nearly lost his small electrical business because of mounting debt while raising his daughter alone. Vanessa quietly invested in his company, helping him transform it into one of the region's fastest-growing security technology firms. She also established a college scholarship for Lily, ensuring she would one day pursue her dream of becoming a veterinarian without worrying about financial burdens. Ethan thanked Vanessa repeatedly, but she always gave the same answer. "You didn't stop because I was wealthy. You stopped because you saw someone who needed help." That kind of kindness changes lives forever. Years later, whenever Vanessa reflected on the darkest chapter of her life, she no longer remembered the crash itself as the most painful moment. What remained with her was the silence inside the intensive care unit, where the masks people wore every day finally slipped away. She realized that wealth could buy luxury, influence, and comfort, but it could never purchase loyalty, honesty, or genuine love. Those priceless gifts came only from people whose hearts remained true even when no reward waited for them. Losing the people she trusted most became the painful lesson that ultimately gave her the wisdom to recognize those who truly belonged in her life. From that day forward, she chose to surround herself not with those impressed by success, but with those who valued integrity above everything else. In the end, greed destroyed the people who believed money could replace love, while truth quietly uncovered every lie they tried to hide. Justice arrived not through revenge, but through patience, courage, and the determination to keep believing that goodness still exists in the world. Vanessa's second chance became more than survival. It became the beginning of a life built on honesty, gratitude, and genuine human connection, proving that even after the deepest betrayal, hope can still lead someone toward a brighter future. True character is revealed when people believe no one is watching. Wealth may attract people to your success, but only kindness, honesty, and loyalty reveal who truly deserves a place in your life. Sometimes life doesn't save you just to survive. It saves you so you can discover the truth, leave behind those who never deserved your trust, and embrace the people who stood beside you without expecting anything in return. Lies may last for a season, but truth always finds its voice, and justice always arrives for those who refuse to give up. Vanessa lost a husband and a lifelong friend, but she gained something far greater: the wisdom to recognize real loyalty, the courage to begin again, and the peace that comes from knowing kindness will always outshine greed. Every ending carries the promise of a new beginning, and sometimes the greatest victory is simply choosing to live with hope instead of hatred. This is the end of the story.